secret onto his servants, the prophets.
Okay.
Right? So there's certain things that are established for some people to know, but other people not to be able to understand, perceive.
Okay.
You know, even when it talks about understanding, he's blocked off understanding from other people, right? From the prayer of others.
Okay.
You know, like David, he prayed for the wicked, or certain of the wicked, to not understand. You know, to not be able to. You know, and that's why things of like the Son of the Most High, he had to speak in parables, because he said it's onto you, you know, to understand it basically.
Right.
You know, but for them it's not given. You know.
Now, okay, so now when the way me personally I process that, okay, is that there's the literal, there's the allegorical, the symbolic, there's the exoteric and the esoteric. So the parable is like the milk, okay, and that's for, like, let's say the uninitiated.
No, for the beginners, basically.
The uninitiated, right? Exactly. The novice.
The novice,
right.
yeah.
But as you study to show yourself approved,
of course,
you know, a workman who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, then you gain a deeper understanding.
If you're allowed.
Well,
because you can fall off, you know.
Well, but anyone can fall off.
Of course.
That's because even a nation can go into apostasy in one generation. So every individual, you're in a sense you're checking your compass every moment, and every thought, again, this is my understanding. Okay, I could be wrong, but in every thought, speech, and action, you know, like making sure that your conversation is righteous. Okay, that's a way of keeping yourself aligned, making sure that your actions are like righteous. Okay, so
which I would say even those go along with the works. You know?
Right, but that's part of the works. That's just thought, speech, and action. Right, now there's some who argue, you know, there's some who call themselves they subscribe to what they even call themselves a New Testament understanding, and within that title there is a dismiss, or I wouldn't call it a rejection, but yeah, in a sense a rejection of what they call the Old Testament.
Yeah, because they don't see it as canon, you know. Or,
right.
Yeah. Well.
Right. So, you know,
like we say, it doesn't make...
like Paul, and pretty much Saul or Paul, he's pretty much the vanguard of that perspective. You know, because you have to ask yourself the question that why is it that what's called the New Testament, so again I'm qualifying it, what's called the New Testament is written in Greek.
He spoke Greek.
Well, yeah, but none of the disciples spoke Greek. They were all common fishermen. They didn't speak that high Greek.
They spoke Hebrew.
They spoke Hebrew, and they spoke what's the
Paleo-Hebrew,
the Abyssinian language too. Man, the name escapes me now. But they didn't speak Greek.
Or Latin?
No, not
Latin.
Not Latin. It's the language they speak in Ethiopia. It's not Ge'ez, but it's Amharic.
Okay.
They spoke Amharic, the Amharic language. Right. That is the language that was spoken in that area. And that's what they speak now. Let's say in what's known as Ethiopia and other places, they still speak the Amharic language.
Okay.
Okay. Which is very close to Hebrew. You know, a lot of words are very similar. Abba.
Which let me write that down.
Yeah.
Let me do some more research on that one too. Okay, I think I got it.
Amharic, yeah, Amharic. Okay, so I asked myself the question. I said, okay, what is the schism between those who call themselves New Testament believers? So for me, in short, my conclusion was, in terms of, I'll just use the term like the Abrahamic traditions, the traditions of like Abraham. There seems to be a battle for authority over the blessing, you know. And so the first break happened with what's called the Christian break. So they said, no, you don't have to, the authority and the final word over the teachings and the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding is no longer in Israel.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be in the hands of the Christians. Now it would be, but not even in the hands of the Jewish Christians, which are more represented in Matthew. Because if you see Matthew, he's like, hey, you know, think not that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. You know, he's speaking, and I only come for the children of like Israel. But then when you go into Paul, he's like, oh, if you want to eat some pork, eat some pork.
I don't think so. Well, that not from the understanding that we learned.
Right.
You know, it was the Gentiles. Sometimes the Gentiles, because Gentiles, the same way heavens, have different definitions. You know.
Right.
So there was a Gentile talking about the heathens, a Gentile talking about Israelite foreigners. So when he's saying I'm an apostle of the Gentiles, it's really talking about those Israelite foreigners amongst the heathen.
Okay,
you know?
so you're saying these are
because it can't work where
these are Hebrews or Israelites who've fallen, who have adopted another.
Exactly.
So he's trying to bring them back. He's appealing to them to be reverted.
Yeah,
right.
Back. He's not calling heathens into the church. He's calling Israelites thinking that they are heathens, right? Or living amongst the heathens, got the heathens' customs. And now they have to come back to their true nationality. Okay. That's right? What you say Paul is doing. That's what Paul is doing, and then it eventually, like all of them, basically, because what they came back, you know, they're supposed to be back now, you know, and what we're all Hellenized. Well, that's Greek. Because remember, what's his name? Shalmaneser, right? The fourth, right? And I can actually get it in the scriptures where there was a decree where you couldn't call yourself a Jew no more. You know, he wanted everybody to be, you know, there would be no separation. You know, because since the beginning there was that separation. You know, and now at certain times they wanted to break that, right, and have the nation of Israel be a level playing field. But really, that's going to lower the nation of Israel. You know, which is breaking that natural order. Well, you have a lot. I mean, to me, again, like when I read what's called the New Testament, it's a more conciliatory, it's a more pro-Roman, you know, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. It's a more, I mean, when you think about that time, that was a very contentious time. You know, you had the zealots. It was a revolutionary time. Oh yeah. You know, and so what was coming out of when you look at a lot of the New Testament like doctrine, it's not really to me. It doesn't seem to be set in that. Only Israel. In that, well, not just that, but in a revolutionary spirit. You know, like everything is in the ethereal.
as opposed to, you know, we got to do battle here on earth too. There's certain things that we have to do to maintain our culture and to make sure that we in fact be not conformed.
Because really what is written back then is really for us now, you know, because at the end, if we go into like 2nd Thessalonians, it talks about how there's a falling away first, right? So they knew that everybody was gonna die, right? It wasn't gonna be at that time that the Son of the Most High comes back, right? But it's the things that they wrote in these books to establish the ones that came in the end times.
So
right?
What do you think is meant when the disciples, if this who you're saying the Son of the Most High is, like, and when the disciples are asking Jesus, like, well, when, you know, when will we see these things that you're prophesizing come to fruition? And he said, within your generation. Right. So there's some who believe that
there's reincarnation.
Well, I mean, there are other scriptures that kind of point to that, because there's another scripture when Jesus Christ asked the disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" And the response was, "Some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Isaiah." In that there's it's implied that
it was common.
There are people considered that, and that's very much a common belief system within African cosmologies. You can't find an African belief system
without that,
and even many European belief systems that don't believe in the idea of reincarnation or the fact that the spirit is not totally obliterated.
Yeah,
like
the breakdown we got about the spirit was that a spirit is pure energy. A spirit is fire. Like they say, they talk about a hell doctrine, where you die and you go to this place where you burn up.
Yeah.
Well, spirit can't. It's already pure energy. It's pure fire.
Right.
So it can't do that. That's why there's, according to the scripture, there's no real hell like that. In the spiritual realm.
Yeah. Well, you could see in what's called the Old Testament, they never talked about that. There's no mention of hell. You don't really, and it's not really even mentioned much in what's called the New Light Testament.
What they do mention in Job 3, it says, this is Job 3, and I'm gonna start at 11. It says, "Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lied still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest." Right? It says, "With kings and counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves, or princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver, or as in hidden untimely births, I had not been, as infants which never saw light. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest." Right? So that shows you that there's no separation when you go into the spiritual realm.
Okay.
You know, even the righteous and the wicked, you know, the kings and the peasants, they're all together, you know? So that gives the understanding of what happens after you perish. You know, everyone is at rest. You know, the spirit is at rest. You know, that's why in the New Testament it refers to these bodies as chains of darkness, you know? Let me just finish this off. It says, "There the prisoners rest together, they hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Right?
Mm-hmm. So that the spirit world is like is the great equalizer.
Exactly.
Every one is of the same form.
Yeah,
we're not
celestial bodies.
We're not tied to these identities that we understand here in what you would call the in the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a common. That is a common understanding in a lot of faith systems. You know, a lot of faith systems believe that.
Exactly.
You know, like I was just watching. The reason I'm on this thing because I don't know if you ever heard of a brother named Dr. Nico Rashadi.
I think so.
He's the one who's like traveled around the world, documenting the African presence all over the world. You know, taking photos of people in Asia and Vietnam and showing how.
I'll look him up.
Yeah, as African people that we pretty much have had presence all throughout the world. From Japan from Asia to the north, south, east, and west.
Because I mean, even in Egypt, they cut off the noses. You know.
Oh yeah. They being, you know, well, in you can even go more recent. You can even go to Napoleon. Napoleon did. Mm-hmm. You know, and some of the times the noses and the lips were like cut off even by the quote unquote the Cometics of the Egyptians in order to deface a figure that they wanted to dishonor in the afterlife. You
I
know?
can see that.
Okay, so that in some cases it was done for that like reason. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I don't necessarily, me personally, I don't subscribe to that type of idolatry. Mm-hmm. You know, I could say, someone could say, well, that's part of your history. I could say, well, you could say that.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily identify with it, you know, because my thing is, look at all of the energy and the resources